Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the SNMP Bootcamp for Enable RMM. I'm Mark, and I'm going to be your trainer today. So, first of all, let's hope it goes better than this morning. This morning, we had a bit of a rude morning because we lost access to our test device for the course, and now I got it back. So, thank God for that. So, we are going to start with the usual welcome from our legal team. They like to say hi, that's their job. They're just trying to remind us that as I go through things, I'm going to go through things that are planned for the future. Those are future plans. Plans can change. All right, that's done. I am Marc-Andre, the Ed Automation Nerd and team lead for the Nerd team. My role consists of helping partners just like you guys to through creating training. I created this course a few weeks ago through creating automation scripts, content, whatever, and whatever I can do with a team to give you guys value back. So that is me. You see at the bottom right my Twitter and LinkedIn. I recognize quite a few names from other courses. I'm assuming most of you already know me. So we're just gonna skip ahead. The agenda for today is pretty simple. We are gonna go through an introduction around SNMP, what it is, how it works, why do you care. We're gonna go through some of the tools that I recommend using. We are gonna talk about using SNMP monitoring in RMM and making your own queries if you wanna build your own SNMP query from scratch. The course this morning ran about an hour and 10 minutes. I'm expecting it to be about the same this afternoon. Considering we have about the same size group, there won't be as many questions as there was yesterday for the other one. So just something to keep in mind time-wise, we might be able to give you back a little bit of time. We booked it a bit long just to have some reading room, but it will likely be a bit shorter. Having said all that, let's get started and let's talk about a quick checklist. So you do need access to your Enable RMM dashboard. You need the ability to add and create checks. That is a permission you need to have on your account. You should also have access to a customer with a probe or with a device for testing that you can add stuff to it. You should also have the ability to add new devices and or discovery jobs if you wish to do so through the course. You should also have the lab manual for this course. It is attached to this GoToWebinar. If you don't have it, let us know. So yeah, and finally, you should also have a browser. If you don't panic. We'll definitely show you how to get through that. With that, now we can start. So for those of you that are not super familiar with it, what is SNMP? SNMP, first of all, stands for Simple Network Management Protocol. This is the long name. Nobody cares. It's SNMP. That's all you really hear from it. The SNMP protocol, or which is redundant, but the SNMP is a protocol that's used for managing and monitoring network connected devices. Now, I say management because yes, there is the ability to send commands back through SNMP. It is incredibly not used often. Like this is very, 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 very rare, but it is something that is technically possible in some instances for some devices, but you're not gonna do that. And Enable RMM does not support that either. It is also embedded into most commercial grade and some home grade devices. For example, at the office, we use a different brand for routers, switches, and like that. Every single device has SNMP. We do monitoring with it. It's awesome. It works great. And then myself personally at home, I have my home router for my ISP that has SNMP. I use a D-Link router for one of my labs, and it also has SNMP. And I use Ubiquiti devices for my access points. They also have SNMP. So it is actually surprisingly common to find SNMP on everything. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. Now, the next very important thing is that there's 3 versions of SNMP that exist. You have SNMP v1, which is the first version that ever came out. It's very common out there. You'll see it everywhere. You have SNMP v2, which is improved, has better error handling. It is more commonly used now. And finally, you will see SNMP v3. SNMP v3 has improved security and privacy. It has some encryption features and things like that. Sadly, Enable RMM does not support it. If you are required to use SNMP v3, our sister platform and Central do support it. And no, I'm not trying to sell you anything. It is something that you can switch to. It is about the same cost as Enable RMM. It's just a different platform. They both fit very different niches, and they're both amazing in their own right. We have 25,000 plus customers today, and we have a good split between the two. There's no harm in using either or. It's just whatever fits your bill. So once again, don't take it the wrong way if I'm suggesting that as I answer some of your questions. Next is continuing on what is SNMP. There's some common terms you're gonna hear throughout the course, and because not everybody is super familiar, I wanted to include those terms right there at the beginning. The first one is SNMP agent. The agent, and I'm doing air quotes here, the agent is a software that runs on the monitored device. So you have your switch, your router, things like that. In the case of a Cisco device, it's embedded in a Cisco iOS. In the case of a WatchGuard, it's built into the WatchGuard BIOS. In the case of a HP server, it will be built into the HP ILO software, and so on. That is where the agent resides. The agent is the one that gets the query and sends data back. The SNMP manager is the software that is querying the agent, the SNMP agent, to get a data point. So that is going to be your enable RMM agent, for example. This is the device that will be doing the query. In the case of our lab today, we're going to be using MIB browser. MIB browser can also be considered as an SNMP manager. Next is OID or OID or object identifier. The OID, I call them OID personally, I don't say OID, it's weird to me. But the OIDs are a unique address that points to the data point. You'll see when we look at MIB browser, you will see things like .136.12112, whatever, BS thingy. That is basically the address or the unique key to point to the data points you're looking for. There's an index, so the same OID can have multiple values. In the case where you have a switch with 24 ports or 48 ports, you would have 24 or 48 instances of that OID to tell you about every port. That is something that a lot of devices do. Next is going to be your MIB or MIBs or Managed Information Base. This is essentially your decoder ring or Rosetta Stone for decoding the OIDs. The MIB files are something that you're going to find from your vendors. I'll explain a little more on that later. But what you're going to do with them, you're going to import that into your MIB browser tool, the iReasoning tool, for example. And this is going to help you decode the fact that 136.122.11, for example, would be your device name. That is the OID maps to the device name. The MIB files contain that mapping to help you understand, because otherwise you'll have a bunch of numbers and you won't know what is what. Finally, another term that's important, but it's not as relevant in RMM, is traps. SNMP has the ability to send traps back in some cases for some devices to say, okay, here's an alert that occurred. Someone rebooted the device, someone logged in a bit of change, whatever the case is. Traps are alert-based events that are initiated by the agent towards the manager. So that's something that you configure in your SNMP agent software. In SNMP, there's a variety of different data types. You're going to see your Boolean, integer, bit string, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go through the whole list. This is boring. But it's just, I just want to point it out. Like, a lot of people don't understand there's a ton of possible things. Realistically, you're going to use in a day-to-day Boolean, integer, a string, and maybe time tick. That's what you typically would be using. That is what most people will see on any given day. And that is pretty typical. So yeah. And now that I said all of that, why would you even care, right? Like, we're talking about SNMP. You guys are there listening to me going like, what is he talking about? Why do I care? Because SNMP is often the only way to get the data points you want from your devices. So for example, your switch or router may not have any other APIs or ways to get the data out easily from to get the health of the devices. So SNMP is often the only choice. It's somewhat easy to use. It is universal. It is the same protocol, the same config, the same setup for every vendor. The only difference is the OIDs, but the actual setup is the same. Most vendors also publish publicly their MIB file. Now, I'm not going to help you find every single MIB file that there is, but honestly, like, if you come here and you say, okay, I have a WatchGuard firewall MIB, you can literally just Google it, and very quickly, usually Landsweeper, there's a SNMP scanner tool. There you go. MIB file details for WatchGuard, and here's some of their MIBs. So those are very, very easily found online, and I literally Googled this at random. If you want to do the same thing for ESXi, MIB files, you will literally just, there you go, VMware MIB files. They're easily found. You just need to do a little bit of Googling. You'll find them. Some vendors are hiding them behind a login. So like Cisco is notorious for doing that for all their stuff. You may need to log in with your Cisco ID or your partner ID to get to it, but a lot of vendors are just publicly accessible. And also the SNMP protocol has a ton of resources online. If you want to just Google, hey, how to get this data point through SNMP, you'll have somebody who built a query and will tell you what to do. Like, it's actually very common. So that is my 1,000-foot view intro on SNMP. As we move along, let's talk about how SNMP actually works. And the long story short, because this could be a very long story just on that one thing, is that SNMP, you do what we call gets, is what the bulk of what you're going to do is. So you're going to get data points back, and we're going to use them for pick a reason. The SNMP get is basically going to be generated by the manager. So again, the RMM agent will create what we call an SNMP packet, which would contain the version of SNMP, the community, or in quotes, the password, and then the data about the request that is to be sent. So it says, here, I want these OIDs, I want to do a get or a get next or whatever. And if that matches and the community is correct, the agent will reply with whatever you're asking for. Now, if the password is incorrect, the version is incorrect, or whatever, it will typically just ignore you. It will just say, device did not answer. And that is infuriating when you're trying to set it up, but that is the way SNMP works. And this morning when I was trying to set up my alternative, there was a few choice words when I was on mute because of that, because it's always the same while you try to fix a firewall. So keep that in mind. Depending on what kind of query you do, if you do a get next, bulk, and so on, you may get more or less the information. In the case of RMM, all you're going to do is get, so it's going to be super easy. You don't need to worry too much, but it's just something to keep in mind. In the case of traps, traps are generated on events, like I said earlier. So what happens is the agent will trigger a call to the manager that you configured to say, like, hey, here's my IP address, here's my OID, and here's the different data points. The traps also have OIDs, by the way. And then the manager will receive it and will process it. If you have a need for traps, so if you need to monitor specific alerts and things like that, you can very well do that within Central. It has the probe technology, which allows that. RMM does not at the moment, so just keep that in mind. It is possible to do. You will just need our sister solution. Once again, there's no good or bad. It's just that they're different and they have different niches, so that's why. Let us take a quick little look at SNMP MIB browser and looking into files. So I already showed you guys how to find files. It's actually surprisingly simple. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go here. Did I get kicked out? Hey, I did not get kicked out. Woo-hoo. Yeah, so what we're gonna do is you're gonna go MIB browser. In your lab manual, you will have a link to it, so you can just click the link. And I always say that, but nobody listens. But try not to do it at the same time as I'm doing it, because you won't be able to listen and do it. It's just physically impossible. And then you'll lose stuff. You won't be able to keep up, and you'll be frustrated at me when we get to the lab. So try to watch me do it and then do the lab later. It just gives you a better experience. I think I say that every time, and I always have people in the question that talk to me about it at the end, go like, oh, it was hard to follow. I wasn't able to do it because they were trying to do it. So please don't try that. So when you go to download, you will find there's a free version. The free version has a limit on how many MIB files you can import. There's a few limitations. You have a pro and an enterprise if you want. They are paid software. The free one is what I'm going to use here. I'm going to say download, scroll down, yes, please. And there's a Windows and a Mac version. So just pick whatever makes sense to you and install it. Once you install, this is what you're going to get now. All these are going to be minimized, but you're going to get to this. So once you launch MIB browser, I'm not going to show you how to install software. I'm pretty sure everybody can click next, but this is what you'll get too. So the first lab will just make you do that. Just install it, get it ready. But for me, I'm going to go through a few things. On the left side here, you see all the active MIBs, MIB files. That's what they are. If you want to remove MIB files, you can do unload. If you want to see what is currently loaded, you can do this, and it will show you that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 MIB files. Yeah, okay. So you have 6 MIB files in here, and this is going to show you everything you need to know. Now, the way that the MIBs work, like I said, it's a decoder thing. So it shows you that the OID is so-and-so, and this is a description. This is a string. This is a read-only because you can change that. Again, you can do writes in some cases. And this is a description of the device, blah, 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 blah. Now, if I want to get everything that's on that device, I can simply come here and see walk. And I'm going to, it's going pretty darn fast. I'm going to stop it now because, you know, we don't care all that much. Basically, what it did is that it pulled a ton of information. Now, it pulled my my device name, it put my object ID, and so on and so on. It also pulled a bunch of OIDs that we don't know what they are. That's why I was saying it's very useful to have the MIB files for your vendors, because otherwise you just have to figure out what that IP thing here is supposed to be. It doesn't make sense to me. Or even this, it's 10 milliseconds, but 10 milliseconds of what, right? So having the MIB files like this here tells you like, oh, this is your interface index, description, type, MTU settings, and speed, and so on and so on and so on. That makes it a lot easier. So yeah, so that is something to keep in mind. The last digit of any OID you see, so if you look here, it is 1361211. So if there you go. The system description .0. It is 1361211.0. There's one more zero here. That is the index. You will see that across every SNMP thing. Like this here, for example, the last digit is the index 205, 220, and so on. This is because there's 200 and some instances of this specific item. I think this one is looking at software installed or software running, sorry. So it looks at the CPU and so on, but you can see every single instance and their ID. So always keep in mind that the last digit is always going to be your index. So even if you know what they are, you see something something .0. In this case here, the last digit, the .5 would be your index. You can see here they're all the way up to 10, but you would have to know what they are, but you still know the last digit is always the index. General overview, to start with that today, we're going to play with it quite a bit more, but that's the overview. Someone's asking, Craig is saying, are we looking at adding traps and SNMP v3? This is things that are being looked into, but I don't have any kind of ETA on it. I have no idea if it's going to be the next 3 months, 12 months, or more. I know this has been looked into, but I have no idea as far as what time frames there is for it. So I can't give you any more yet on that. So just keep that in mind. And what we're going to do next is discuss how to use SNMP in Enable RMM. Now that we know the basics, now that we know how it works and all that fun stuff, let's take a look at using pre-built checks and queries. This is going to be the second big part of it. So what I'm going to do is go to my RMM and right there. And what I'm going to do first is a couple of things actually I want to point out. First of all, you have the ability under networks to find your network devices just like that. Then this is one of my home networks. You can see I can see all kinds of cool stuff. I want to take this device. This is I guess an HP printer. Right click, monitor it, and I can add that, right? This one actually says it found some SNMP, so I could actually just right click and say monitor, and this will add it to being monitored. Now this is creating devices in your dashboard. This is something that you need to pay for, but that is the way that this is intended. What it will do is the device will show here under network device. Give it a second. And once it does show up, it's going to let me, there it is. It's going to see that this is one of the devices. This is an HP device. I can then add SNMP. Where's my second one? That one I want to do. It's already being monitored. Where'd it go? Oh, okay, whatever. So we'll use this one. Oh, there we are. So this guy, you can see here, it actually added automatically cartridge level, ping, and paper level, and everything else. So I can actually see, oh, it's monitoring 2 different trays. There it is, tray 1 and tray 2. It's monitoring the cartridge level. There's 4 cartridges. There's a cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It will do this automatically for different models of switches, routers, SANs, NAS, things like that. It will only discover and apply some of the monitoring that it can. If it is like this one, it says, I don't know what to do for pick a reason, you can come here and say add check and use the pre-built stuff. Now, if I go into SNMP check, let's use the light version. You then have the ability to use your vendor. You can use the type of product that you want. And then you have to enter your own OIDs. At that point, this part kind of sucks. We'll cover that later. We'll come back because it's not fun. You also have the ability to add a regular SNMP check. You can see here's a product I want to do, whatever it is, and use existing ones, right? So from the library, this is one that we pre-created. So it lets you reuse. If you want to use something that's completely built in with the queries, the easiest and the free version, which is what I'm guessing most of you are going to use, is if you go to a server device, like let's say this guy here, I have the ability to say I would like to add a check 24/7 SNMP. And when I do so, I can pick the vendor. So let's say I want to do it's a HP, and I want to monitor this cluster module storage. This is actually a left hand, that's a SAN. this is the OID. Now, that's what I was saying about the OID. Some of them are insanely long. It is index 1, and it's saying that 1 is up, 2 is down. So 1 is okay, equal to 1 is good. You would then need to put in the IP address of the device and the community, and then you say okay. Like I said earlier, we support V1 and 2, so just pick the right version for your device. That is very, very important. They are not compatible with each other. You need to turn on whichever version you want. And that allows you to add more or less any checks that you want towards any device that you want. So if I go into my MIB browser here, I'm going to put the IP into the chat, so you guys are welcome to use that. V2 and Mark Bootcamp is the community. So this is a lab device I have in Azure. This is literally just a Linux box. It doesn't matter. So you can use that for your testing if you guys are interested when you do a lab next. But in my case, what I'm going to do right now is say add a check, and I'm going to leave it completely here. So I'm going to go and say, you know what, I want to do some, what do I have? Linux monitoring, and I want to get some network stuff. You know what, let's do some 5-minute load. There you go. And the IP address was this. Community is Mark Bootcamp, and say okay. And what it's going to do is going to query that device, going to come back and tell me something. I know someone's going to ask, because someone always does. You can do the same thing on workstations, but you can only do it to yourself, which I know, oh, that's a Mac device. It only works on Windows. I can do it on Windows and do an SNMP, but you cannot change the IP address or the host name. I am pushing for that to be changed because realistically, the license is the same cost now, whether it's server or workstation, it doesn't matter anymore. But until then, that is something to keep in mind. So what this allows us to do is take pre-built checks and use them just like I did here. Now, this device has not been online in like forever. But if I take this guy here and I say add a check 24/7 SNMP, and I'm going to say pick my Linux again, and I'm going to say I want to see my 1-minute load, because why not? I put my IP, and Mark Bootcamp is my community, just like that, and do OK. What it's going to do is that it's going to connect the device, and then it's going to sync, and it's going to tell me how it's doing. Right now, this is timing out because I was testing something that doesn't work. But this is letting you know whatever is working or not. So that is kind of a nice way to get that information. It's a nice way to just pull it and have it show here. So realistically, there isn't much more to this part. It's just about creating your own checks from existing devices and or existing checks, because we're going to create our own query next. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Picks from the list. Hopefully nobody is bored to death yet. Hopefully it's still somewhat making sense. What we're going to do next is talk about making your own queries. Like, first of all, why would you want to do that? Honestly, because you can. You're going to always end up having devices that we will not have a service pre-made that we'll be able to apply and configure and use. You will need to manually create them. And as you do, we're going to go through how to do that. It's actually not that difficult. So let's take a quick look. If I go into my dashboard and then I open up this. So let's say here's all kinds of different data points on my device. And let's say, you know what, I want to get the, I don't know, the MTU settings on my device. So this is OID 136.121.22.14. In my case, it's .1 because I have two different ones. First one's a loop back and the second one's a real one, my Ethernet. So let's use the second one. It's 1500. So what I want to do is right click and say copy. This is going to copy the OID for me. That is because I'm lazy and we're going to use that. Now, once again, you can do it two ways. I can do it from here. So add a check on my server. So come here. Then I'm manually going to type in what it is. Now, what I recommend on the product is that this is what's going to show when you get the alert. So SNMP check dash whatever the product is. So I'm going to see here, Linux server in Azure. SRV01, let's say, because that's the name of the server, let's assume. And then it'll be main NIC MTU setting. There you go. I need to put the OID. Now, the OID will add a space, we remove that, but it does want to start by a dot. If I don't, it will not work well. So I'm going to add the dot at the beginning, although, yeah, we did. Then I'm going to say, is that, actually, you know what? I'm going to say, if it is less than or equal to, let's say, 2000, I want it to be okay. If it's over 2000 for some reason, then go into a failed state. The next thing is to put the IP again, 52.255.182.97. and then Mark Bootcamp. Now, this is literally all there is. It's actually done. So what it does, I say, look at this OID. Actually, I didn't put the index, so that's on me. I made a typo here. There you go. Look at this OID with this index. Pull the data point and tell me, as long as it's over or lower than or equal to 2000, that's okay. Then look at this IP with this port with this information and do it. Okay. Now that I did that, it is added right here. And that's why I was saying the naming convention is super important, because they'll set Linux server in Azure, SRV01. So if you're gonna add 5, 10, 20 of those on a device, you wanna make sure you name them so that you know what they are. This is the quote unquote free way of doing it. If you do it through your network devices, you would add the device right here. It would be fine, it would be showing, it would be easy. I would just say add SNMP. Then I'm gonna say, okay, the check name will be, I don't know, what did I call it? Main NIC MTU setting. The vendor, I'm going to leave it as unknown in my case, although is there something I can reuse? Nah, let's just make it blank. The product type will be I'll leave it use unknown, whatever for now. Actually, I could have put VM. Yeah, that's better. And then I'm going to save it for future use and do next. Now it wants me to add a query. So that is a long way to do it, but it's also nice. So the OID name will be MTU setting. The OID is this, and .2 is there. And then I'm gonna say the index is in the OID right here. Or I can do that, remove the index and say, let you query it. It will add every instance of it automatically for you. So that is a nice way to do it if you want. It's not mandatory. It's not enforced. It's just, you're welcome to do or not do it. In my case, I'm gonna say no, thank you. Then I need to add a metric. The metric is gonna be pretty simple. It's gonna be MTU setting, and it's gonna be the variable is my MTU. Duh. Then I could do a calculation and say like, oh, take this divided by whatever, do this and that, whatever I want. I'm not gonna do that. I'll keep it simple. The unit, is there a unit that makes sense? In this case, there is not, so whatever. This is useful to use because this allows you to scale up and down and show you what they are. Instead of going like, it's a million, and it's a million what? It's a million bytes, which is 1 megabyte. Oh, okay, cool. But if you don't choose a value, it's just gonna go like, this is a million, have fun with that. So you can see it here. Then, do you wanna do this for information only, which basically removes any threshold? It will never go failed, but it will let you show it. Then, I'm gonna say, okay, 0 to 2000 is okay. 2000 to, I don't know, 900,000 is bad, let's say, whatever. You would choose what you want. Actually, it doesn't let me put the same, so like that, and say okay. So now I have this created, I have my threshold. The next step is, do you want to generate alerts? Do you want to do something, right? I'm just gonna say, yes, please always send it, thank you. It shows you what it's doing. You can click on it, see all the details. If you're comfortable, apply. And at this point, this gets added to your device. This will take about, yeah, there you go, about 5 seconds or so. It's telling you like, yeah, it's done. So all I gotta do now is click on refresh, and boom, it's right there. It's gonna validate it, it's gonna apply it, it's gonna test it, and it'll come back. It's not gonna work because this is an HP printer. Once again, this is just to show you how to do it, right? I'm not trying to set up all kind of fancy thing on my lab. This doesn't matter for me. But this is the idea. The alternative is to use a light version. The light version is very similar. You put your check name, so something MTU setting. The vendor is unknown. The type is virtual machine. The OID name is going to be the MTU value. There you go, .2. You put the full OID in this case because there is no check to configure. Then I'm going to say there's no unit, and then whatever to whatever, and save. So that is the easy, rapid version. It just uses whatever defaults you have across the board, and you're done. So if you want to go easier, that's the way you do it. Personally, if I'm going to go through the trouble, I'd rather go through all the settings and configure it my way. But again, we give you both options because we know some people prefer to use B versus A, and it's up to you. All right, not seeing any question. I'm going to assume this is still somewhat making sense and nobody's mad at me yet. The question from Craig here is saying, without traps, can you check an SNMP check to perform an action like alerting via email and text? So when a check goes failed, you do have the ability, the ability to notify you in an alert. I showed that earlier when you configure the custom services or custom checks. But you cannot do it with traps. You have to do it with a regular check. If your device emits a trap, RMM has no way to interpret that today. It's just the way it is. Next question from Tobias is it best practice to use the, no worries, Craig. Is it best practice to use the built-in SNMP checks when able to? For example, use the HP compact checks for the HP DL380, whatever. Yeah. Generally speaking, yes. I mean, the idea of why we created these checks is not for the fun of it, because that sucked. It was a lot of work. But we pre-created them all, those queries, because first of all, we can. And second of all, we wanted to save you time. So whenever they work for you, absolutely, hands down, use those. Now, if you get against a new generation server or a different model or brand or whatever, and it doesn't work, then yeah, you would have to go pull the MIB, take a look, and figure out what to do. But unless that, for sure, use the built-in stuff when you can. Absolutely, hands down, no question. So with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a quick Q&A. If you have questions for me, let me know. I'll be happy to help however I can. Up to you guys. If not, we're going to adjourn early like we did this morning. Not a big deal. But I do like to go a little long if we can answer questions. So last call, we'll do a going once, going twice, and last call. No questions. All right, done. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. If there's anything whatsoever I can do to help, please reach out. You know how to do that, so please do. And I will see you in the next course. Thanks, everybody.